is just fun. Like, would I say it's the most well-written book I've ever read? No. Is some of the dialogue kind of cringe? Yes. But did I love it all the same? Yes. Hey, what's up you guys? It's Avery and welcome back to my channel and Happy New Year. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about my favorite books of 2023. So this year I read 44 books, which is low for me, I'm aware. But out of the 44 that I read, I gave 9 5 stars, and those were the ones that just really stood out to me, that I really loved. There were a lot of books that I enjoyed and I gave them 4 stars, but to be a 5-star book, you really just have to have that special something, you know what I mean? I have to not be able to put it down, or I have to just feel really emotionally connected to the characters or the writing, and there was only 9 of those this year. And I actually went through quite a dry spell in the middle of the year where there just weren't any books that I was giving 5 stars, which was kind of unfortunate. But I'm going to talk about the ones that I did love, and stay tuned for the end of this video because I am going to be doing a giveaway of one of the 9 books that was one of my favorites. So without further ado, let's jump into it. So the very first book that I read this year actually turned out to be a 5-star book, which was a great way to start off the year, which was Before Your Memory Fades by Toshikazu Kawaguchi, and this is the 3rd book in the Before the Coffee Gets Cold series. So this series follows a group of people who work at a cafe in Tokyo, and in this cafe you are able to go back to the past. And I made a whole video on the first 2 books of this series, so you can check that out if you want to know more about it. And basically each book has 4 different stories of different people who come to the cafe and want to go back in time for some reason. All 3 of the first 3 books I've given 5 stars. I've loved all of them. I just really love the simple writing style, and each story is different, but each story is very emotional, heartwarming, and I just feel like there's something you can learn from each story as well, because these characters are learning things about, you know, what they should have done in the past or how they should go about their present, and I just feel like it's one of those stories that makes you finish and just want to live your life better and tell the people you love that you love them. This was a great way to start off the year. The next 5-star book that I read this year was One True Loves by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I was obsessed with this book. Don't mind the sticker. I just actually bought this copy because there was a sale. It was like a Black Friday sale, and I read it on my Kindle earlier this year, but I wanted to have a physical copy of it because I loved it so much. And I read this book in, I literally think like 2 days. It was like 24 hours. I read it so fast and I was so hooked. It follows this woman who has been married to her high school sweetheart for a year when he goes missing in a helicopter crash, and he is basically presumed dead even though his body is never found. And so she is really obviously struggling to grieve and move on with her life, and it's just very tragic what happens, but she is able to eventually move on, and she rekindles a connection with this other boy also from high school, and she ends up getting engaged to him. And then, surprise, 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 her husband is found. I think he's found like 5 years after he went missing. Maybe not 5 years, maybe 3 years, I don't know. But he is found. And none of this is a spoiler, this is all on the back of the book, so you know that this is all going to happen, but he's found. He has been surviving all of this time alone, trying to get back to her, but she has moved on and fell in love with this other man. So she finds herself torn between 2 men that she loves. She has no idea what to do. As I was reading, I was just like, I have no idea who she's gonna pick, and I don't even know who she should pick. I was so torn with her. I was like, I couldn't even imagine being in this situation. But also I feel like there are cases like this that actually exist where people maybe go into comas and then are in comas for years and years and years. Their husband or wife gets remarried and then they wake up and their spouse is remarried and then no one knows what to do. So it's just kind of a crazy premise and really good. It was just very gripping, and I ended up enjoying it a lot, and I thought the ending was really good too. I mean, there are worse problems to have than having 2 men be in love with you. Okay, so I read that book January 31st of 2023, and then the next time that I read a 5-star book was, oh my gosh, August 28th So pretty much the first 7 or 8 months of the year, I just did not read any 5-star books. So I was kind of struggling this year, and I don't know if it was me, like if I was being really picky or like what the deal was. I mean, a lot of good books that I read, so I don't even, like, I read a lot of great books this year. I just wasn't obsessed with any of them until this book in August. And the next book that I read that I loved was The Girl Who Reads on the Metro by Christine Fleury. This is a really short, very cute book about this woman who takes the metro in Paris every single day, and there are people that she always sees on her commute who are always reading, and she's so interested in what they're reading, and she loves to read. But one day she ends up stumbling across this like strange bookshop where this man and his daughter live, and they kind of have this job of giving out books to people who they think need them the most, and they recruit this main girl, her name is Juliet, to join the cause. But then suddenly the man disappears and she's put in charge of watching his daughter, and it's just, the story follows Juliet and kind of her growth because she's kind of just been living the same life for a very long time. She's in this rut, she's stuck, and she's not really happy, and this kind of gives her the opportunity to break out of her comfort zone and figure out what it is that she actually wants for her life. And I really liked this book because it had a lot of really great quotable moments in it, and I just thought it was a really nice read for anybody who loves books and loves to read. You'll definitely enjoy this, and I just thought it was super cute and very heartwarming and just overall like a really great read. The next book that I loved this year is called Marigold and Rose by Louise Glick, and this is a tiny book. I guess it's not poetry, but it's just like literally the smallest book. It's like 50 pages, and it took me, I think, like an hour to, not even an hour, it probably took me like 30 minutes to read the whole thing. It was just very short. But it is about the first year of the life of two twins, and it follows them kind of learning who their father and mother are, and I kind of can't describe it well, so I'm gonna read. There are elements you'd expect to find in a story of infant twins, father and mother, grandmother and other grandmother, bath time and nap time, but more than that, Marigold and Rose is an investigation of the great mystery of language and of time itself, of what is and what has been and what will be. So I don't even really know how else to describe it besides that, but I'm a twin myself, so I think that is why I really enjoyed it. Something about these two twins is that even though they're babies, they kind of have this consciousness like they're adults, like while they're kind of like they're speaking about each other. And the babies are two very different. They have very different personalities, and that's how I am with my twin sister. We are very different, even though we're twins. So I just really liked it. Like, I thought that reading this book was kind of like going into like what the mind of maybe being a baby was like with my twin when I was an infant, and so that's why I enjoyed it. I see how like maybe not everyone else would give it 5 stars or relate to it that much because of that reason, but it was very cute, very short, and like an easy read. The next book that I gave 5 stars this year was also another really short book, which is maybe a theme, and that is You Will Not Have My Hate by Antoine Léry. So this is a memoir of this man, Antoine, following the death of his wife, Helene, after she was killed in a terrorist attack in Paris in 2015 at the Bataclan Theater, which was one of, like, it says the deadliest attack on France since World War II. It was a horrible terrorist attack. His wife was killed, and they had a 17-month-old son. So this man is not only having to deal with the loss of his wife, but also becoming a single parent and having to raise his son by himself and then grieve his wife. And it's very sad. Like, I cried a lot throughout it, but it was also just really inspiring. And he wrote this book because actually he posted on Facebook a few days after his wife died this post that ended up going really viral, basically saying the response to this terrorist attack is that they will not have his hate. And something he wrote in the original response was, for as long as he lives, this little boy will insult you with his happiness and freedom. How not to let it ruin your life and not give these people the satisfaction of just being filled with rage and hate and trying to be filled with love and joy and raising his son. So it was very emotional. I definitely cried a lot throughout it, but it was a kind of a short memoir of, like, I think it's like the first year after she dies. Very, very sad, but like very, very good and inspiring. And I love reading memoirs about people who go through really hard things because it's just very inspiring. The next book that I read that I gave 5 stars was Lessons in Chemistry by Bonnie Garmus. I loved this book. This book is very popular, has been really popular, so I've been waiting to read it and I finally gave it a read. It follows this woman, Elizabeth Zott, in the early 1960s. She is a chemist and she is working in this laboratory, and she deals with a lot of discrimination and sexism, even though she's one of the smartest people at this laboratory, and the men often have to come to her to have her help them, but they treat her horribly and she deals with really, really, you know, tough stuff. It says everyone there has a very unscientific view of equality except for one, Calvin Evans, the lonely, brilliant, Nobel Prize nominated grudge holder who falls in love with, of all things, her mind. True chemistry results. But a few years later, when Elizabeth finds herself to be a single mother, she ends up becoming a TV cooking show host in order to help support her and her child. And so this kind of goes against everything that she wants. She doesn't want to just be known for the way she looks and being this TV personality. So she kind of brings her values and her own spin to this TV show and teaches women and inspires women. And there's so much more that happens in the book. Like, it's such an interesting plot, and you like kind of go through lots of different eras of her life, of Calvin's life, and then eventually her daughter, and they all kind of come together at the end. And so it's a great story about love, about familial love, about platonic love, about romantic love. Also has some definitely sad moments in it, but overall a really good book. The next book that I read this year that I gave 5 stars was All About Love by Bell Hooks. So this is the only nonfiction memoir-y book on this list. No, that's not true. I just talked about a memoir. Anyway, this is not really a memoir because it doesn't really go into Bell Hooks' life as much. She does talk about her own life sometimes, but it's more about just love. And I thought that this book was going to be mainly about romantic love, and there are definitely spots that are focused on romantic love, but it's also just about like being a loving person in general, and how as a society we have just become loveless, and a lot of the systems in place in our society don't work well with love and with having a loving society. I have a lot of tabs in it. Each tab is kind of something different about romantic love or just about any type of love, and it's about learning how to trust people and care for people well. And I just really, really enjoyed it. I underlined a lot of great quotes in here, and I actually started reading it from the library, and I got like 5 pages in and I ordered a copy online so that I could get it and underline it because I knew I was going to want to do that. So this is definitely a book for people who are maybe not super into nonfiction or self-help, but this is a good way to kind of get into it because it's very interesting, very relatable, inspiring, I think, without being too like self-helpy. The second to last book that I gave 5 stars this year was Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros, and I actually do have a copy of it. My mom just got me a copy for Christmas, so thanks, Mom, love you. But I left it with her for her to read because I've already read it. I just wanted a copy, and I loved this book. I knew it had a ton of hype, but I just didn't know how much it was going to suck me in and how invested I was going to be in the characters, and especially in the main girl. This book is basically just like How to Train Your Dragons meets Divergent. I feel like it's very Divergent-y. Some of the characteristics of the dragon riders are kind of like Dauntless-esque, but it follows this girl named Violet as she enters the dragon rider quadrant of this battle school, and she was never supposed to go into this part of the school, but she ends up being thrown into this crazy world where people die all the time, people are getting murdered by each other all the time, and it's very ruthless. And she's training and training up to eventually be able to bond with a dragon and become a rider and one of these dragon rider warriors, which is like such a cool premise already. And then we also have a little love triangle happening as well, with this boy named Zayden, who is her wing leader, who's kind of like her leader of her section, as well as this boy that she's known since she was a kid. And I loved her and Zayden's relationship, their little banter. I was just super interested in their romance the whole time. This book is just fun. Like, would I say it's the most well-written book I've ever read? No. Is some of the dialogue kind of cringe? Yes. But did I love it all the same? Yes. I also will say, not like trigger warning, but there is quite some spice, mainly at the end of the book, because I heard that this was like a romance, it was maybe spicy, but as I was reading it, there was like nothing. It was so tame, so tame, so tame, and then bam, it really goes into it. So a very, very intense, spicy scene. So if you're not into reading that, like, you could just skip over it. Once you know what's about to happen, you fully can just skip over it. But that's there, so be forewarned, because I was like just reading and then my eyes started bulging out of my head. But besides that aspect, the romance aspect, the plot is just really interesting, and I was just super into the dragons. I love dragons now. Okay, the last book that I rated 5 stars this year and that I loved was Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. This is another one that I had heard a lot of people were super into, and so I kind of go into books very cautiously when they're really hyped up, because I often get my expectations up and then they very rarely meet those expectations. But this one really, really did. I loved this book. This is a romance book that is, it's like fantasy, but it doesn't feel super like you're in a fantasy world. It pretty much just feels like you're in like 1920s, I think it might supposed to be London, because there's some words in it that are like English, British English. They feel like, I think it's London, I don't know, but you're in like a 1920s era city, but there are these gods that are warring. So the country is at war. Some people are fighting for this one god and others for the other god, and this book follows 2 journalists who are covering the war. It's like a rivals to lovers, where they are competing to get the stories that they want, but they also, you can tell they care about each other, and they end up forging this connection, which just is so good. It's so beautiful. I was just kind of obsessed with their relationship a little bit. I just loved it. I thought it was like very non-toxic, which I love in a little bit of romance. Just, hey, let's have a nice relationship where they just care about each other. You know what I mean? And it takes them a long time to admit their feelings and the whole deal. Aside from the romance as well, you're like very interested in these gods warring and like what's going on with that. And it's going to be a duology, or I guess the second book is already out. I love a duology because I love to keep it short. I don't want to read a 5-book series. I really just don't. The end of the first book was definitely a cliffhanger, so I'm excited to see what happens. And it's a great book. I love their love. Definitely recommend. So those are the 9 books that I loved this year. I did really enjoy a lot of other books this year, but those were just the ones that really stood out to me, and I gave 5 stars. And if you want to read one of these books sooner rather than later, now let's talk about the giveaway. I'm going to be giving away a copy of The Girl Who Reads on the Metro. I just loved this book. I thought it was so beautiful, and if you're a reader, you're gonna love it, especially if you live in a big city and you like to read on the subway yourself, then that's just going to feel very relatable to you. As someone who lives in New York, I get it. So I'm going to have a link down in the description. You'll have to put in your email, and then I'm not exactly sure how it's going to work, but click on the link. To enter the giveaway, you need to be subscribed, and then comment down below what one of your favorite books was this year. The rules for the giveaway and everything will all be listed down below. Comment down below what your favorite books were that you read this past year and what you're looking forward to reading in this upcoming year. I have a lot of books I'm looking forward to reading, so I'm very excited. And thank you guys so much for watching this video and for watching my channel the past year and the past few years. I really appreciate it. And that's kind of all I've got for you. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Happy New Year!